All right, everybody, you're listening to the AlienPhotog radio show on Party 93.4 and Party934.com. And we're now to the point in the show where it's time to answer a few questions from the Space Chickens. Again, the Space Chickens are just a group of YouTube people who watch my videos and listen to what I have to say there, and they send questions from all around the world all the time. So I'll pick 2 a week to answer. All right, first question comes from Space Chicken Zach. Zach said, "Hello, I just recently started watching your videos and I'm enjoying them a lot. I just have a question. Is there any way to figure out if this has happened to you?" Well, Zach, kinda. There is. You gotta really be willing to explore this possibility. And I always tell people, if you've ever seen a UFO and you're sure of it, you should really look into it because they do have technology that allows them to erase your memory almost entirely. And certainly if you feel like you've had communication with a UFO, like it's come just for you, I can almost assure you that there was some sort of them taking you type of interaction that you just don't recall. Now the way they do this, it's done interdimensionally in a lot of ways, which is hard for us to understand. And one of the dimensions they use is a 5th dimension, which is time. And essentially it just means there's a lot of different layers in time, and they have ways of going to certain spots between planets where they can jump from one timeline to another. But this enables them to take you there to a different place and spend, say, 4 hours with you, and then bring you back within the blink of an eye, usually in your sleep. It goes almost entirely undetected, usually. I usually tell people, if you're fascinated by the subject, what's the reason for that, you know? It's a rather unusual thing to be very curious about, and there's usually a reason for it. And don't underestimate just how much they can erase of your memory, because it can be almost entirely complete, and you can access it. They'll let you do it, but you have to work hard to access those memories. You really got to work hard. Reason being, it can turn your life upside down. In fact, it pretty much does for everybody who has this happen to them. So be prepared for that. If it's something that you want, it isn't necessary. A lot of people are hybrids. There's been an enormous population boom on this planet in the last 100 years. And the hybrid program has a lot more to do with that than people would think. It's all done quietly. Women are taken up and implanted with the fetus after it's grown in there for a while. And it seems like an entirely normal pregnancy to them. They usually see a UFO or two during the pregnancy, that's for sure, and some of them have strange memories and know the child is special. But it's all done naturally at this point. There is a point where babies were actually born from the tube and then sent down here. But if you're under the age of 35 or so, you're almost certainly a womb-born hybrid, if that's the case. And if you are, you don't necessarily need to go into it. It just means you're special. You're put here for a certain reason, and that's to help humanity out in a difficult time. Those who are hybrids have 10% alien genetics about. It's not just one specific species. That 10%, it's an enormous eclectic mix of the best traits from around our part of the universe. And so you'll notice you have some special abilities, some almost superhuman abilities, but not like in the movies. Being psychic, being able to heal things with your hands. Premonitions is a major indicator. Another thing, a way they try to get a lot of people's attention is synchronicity. If you keep looking at the clock and it says 11:11 or 3:33, or if you have one time a day you keep looking at the clock. I don't know if they stand next to you and poke you or how that works, but that's a tremendous indicator something's going on. If you wonder if this might have happened to you, I would say odds are almost 100% that it did. Because why else would you wonder, you know? They erase your memory, and that's what makes it difficult. But it's done for a reason. And only really go for those memories if you're really ready for your entire life to change, because it will change your entire life. So Zach, best of luck. I appreciate you asking the question, and let's move on to the next. All right, and I believe the name here is Corey, but I'm not entirely sure. But Corey sent me a bunch of questions, and I'll try to hit a couple real quick here before we go. And I'll just hit a couple of them real quick. It says, when you were abducted, what kind of test did they conduct? Physical, mental, question mark? And to be honest, I don't recall a lot of things that happened during my quote-unquote abductions. From what I can gather, they're enhancements. Like I said, there's a tremendous number of hybrids in the world. And all these hybrids are taken and basically checked up on. Now, there's some stories of horrible things happening, and there's reasons why. But be careful what you believe in those stories, because oftentimes people are confused by this. I hate to go there, but the most common one is the anal probe. I get a lot of jokes about that. Has anyone ever heard of a colonoscopy? It's the exact same thing, and yet when I go to the doctor, I don't get it. Oh, you're going to go get your anus probed. It's crazy. So it's medical tests to check in on the beings that they helped create. And these hybrids are literally grown in tubes up there. And if you look into abductions, a lot of them remember seeing, as they say, it's interesting looking children, or they remember seeing the tubes. There was even the black box for a while there in the 70s, where they'd approach people with a black box which had a fetus in it, a hybrid fetus. And people really took this the wrong way, but what they're trying to say is we're trying to enhance your genetics, and what better gift can you get as a species? But I don't know what all kind of tests they conduct. I imagine pretty much everything. I recall being implanted, and I made some YouTube videos about that, so you can check that out there. But I really don't know what all tests are done. I'm certain they're very extensive. They check everything, probably. All right, another question he asks, do aliens speak the language of the person they abduct? They speak telepathically, which is from their mind to yours, so you can... I vividly recall them looking at me, and I can hear what they're saying in my own head. And it's always very kind. It's do not worry, be a willing participant, they often say. The more willing you are to work with them, the less they have to use the sleep paralysis and things like that really scare some people. But yeah, everything I hear in my head is English, and I don't know the mechanisms of that. I don't know when it leaves their head if it's English, but I'd have to imagine, yeah, it's the same language to the people they abduct. It's funny, just a memory came back to me now. I can recall them, I can overhear them sometimes speaking telepathically to one another, and that's a very different language. A lot of chirps and clicks and sounds like that. But I can hear that, but that's when they're talking to each other. He goes on to ask, do aliens pick randomly, or is it a preset list? Yeah, that's a list. They don't do it randomly. I mean, they very intelligent, logical beings. They don't just go swooping people up here and there. Not only that, but that's extremely dangerous. You never know who you're going to get, what weapons they might have on them, things like that. Remember, this is all a logistic reality. And there, if you've seen pictures of a lot of aliens, skin is very thin. They're very vulnerable because they've evolved past violence, so their bodies have as well. And the things they do to sedate people to make them forget don't always work. Almost always. They've gotten good at it, but they don't always work. But yeah, it's a preset list, and like I said, it goes back to the hybrid program. These babies are chipped before they're born for tracking purposes, because it's a big world, They can't just magically find everybody. Like I said, there's logistics to all of this. And I'll get into a lot of those logistics as we move forward in other shows. But yeah, that's who they come after. Almost exclusively, every alien quote-unquote abductee is a hybrid. That's why they come and check on the person. They conduct medical experiments to make sure they're doing okay. They want to help, but they just stay in the background because they've learned it's better to let a species govern itself. It usually isn't taken well when they come down from the sky and say, we're in charge now. And if that ever happens, I don't expect it to go well. So this is why it's done through things like the hybrid program. This group of people will lead the world. And some of them are probably in leadership roles now, but as we move forward over the next 20, 30, 40 years after this big 2012 change, that group of people will naturally gravitate to the leadership roles. And thankfully, they're a very selfless group of people who care a lot about other people. So that will be a very big change from what we have now. And that transition will be entirely nonviolent on the part of the hybrids. All hybrids I talk to cringe at the thought of violence, and have since they were children, and myself included. To me, it's the most unlogical thing someone can do is be violent to another living being.